Welcome to the Steelers by the Lake podcast. My name is James Strong, joined once again by Cody Tanner and special guest Dylan. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Dylan?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Dylan is a longtime supporter of the podcast and a good friend of mine. We met back in the college days doing some campus ministry and stuff together. So a long history with me and him there. But we're both Steeler fans, and he's talked and he's messaged me privately and messaged the show about stuff in the past. And I said, hey, let's talk some football. So Dylan's joining us today. We're excited to have him. James, as usual, we're going to go over roster moves and stuff before we talk about this unfortunate non-victory Monday here. And the non-victory actually happened on Monday with Sunday Night Football, which is wild. But that's the way it is. Steelers did elevate running back Jonathan Ward and wide receiver Brandon Johnson from IR for game day. Both those guys, I called the Jonathan Ward thing. I was excited to see him get some playing time and some touches for this game. I didn't expect Brandon Johnson to have an immediate impact like he did. Yeah,
that was definitely a surprising thing. When you really weren't getting a lot of production out of the wide receiver room, you didn't expect the practice squad guy to be somebody they turned to, but they did, and he did have some success in the game.
Yeah. They went on to also activate Jeremiah Moon off of IR to the 53-man roster. We talked about him entering that 21-day window. Didn't take him 21 days, James. Really quick turnaround there. 1 week of training and 1 week of practicing, and he's back on the 53-man roster. Before the game, the inactives we had Russell Wilson, being that third emergency quarterback, Roman Wilson, Jalen Warren, Alex Highsmith, Max Sharping, Michael Pruitt, and Cordero Patterson. All those guys listed as inactive for the game. And then also Larry Ogunjobi was listed as questionable with a groin injury. Isaac Siamalu did get the start, and James, we'll get to that in a little bit. Started off a little rough, but I think he did improve as the game went on. But James, we got to talk about this Steelers game. And Dylan, feel free to share your thoughts with us at any moment. So where do you want to start, James?
Well, I think appropriately, when it rains, it pours, right? And that kind of summarizes this game and kind of how the season is turning for us. We started off the first couple of weeks. You weren't seeing touchdowns on the first few drives, but you were seeing successful drives that at least got field goals. It has gone from that to 3 and outs. This is an alarming trend with a very slow start for the offense. At least the defense wasn't quite as bad to start the game off as they were last week, so that was a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But these slow starts that the offense has been experiencing is just crippling. You can't play successful offense for only one half of a football game and expect to win in the NFL. You can't continuously score less than 20 points and expect to win. We've got some real issues that we've got to fix on this offensive side of the football.
Yeah. We got 3 turnovers in the game, and we'll get to this kind of stuff here momentarily. 3 turnovers in the game, and only one of them led to points. The other 2 of them led to 3 and outs, and just kind of unfortunate. Actually, excuse me, technically 4 turnovers in the game, if I'm not mistaken. We had the 1 fumble, we had the block of the interception towards the end of the first half, and then we had the blocked field goal, which ended in a 3 and out for us. And then we got that late interception that we wound up getting a touchdown off of. But just got to have more consistency out of, in my opinion, both sides of the ball. But man, the offense, and everyone wants to go out and blame Justin Fields on this. And we're going to talk numbers here just in a second. I don't think Justin Fields lost this game. I don't think it was his best game. I don't think he played very well comparatively, especially to his last game. But Justin Fields single-handedly did not lose this game. He had a beautiful throw early to Connor Hayward that was unfortunately dropped. He had a couple other throws to Van Jefferson that were dropped. George Pickens dropped the ball. A lot of drops going around that I thought we got rid of that issue when we got rid of Deontay Johnson. Unfortunately, that was not the case. James, Justin Fields on this day, in this game, 15 of 27 for 131 yards, only a 4.9 average, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And he did have that one fumble that he did recover as well. So no fumbles lost there, but I thought he played fairly well. And then we can't not talk about him. Kyle Allen came in for 2 plays and threw a heater, 1 pass, 1 attempt, 1 completion for 19 yards. Overall, just not a phenomenal performance from the quarterback room, but no mistakes.
Yeah,
you're going to talk. I know where you're going.
Depends on how you're going to define mistakes. To me, accuracy is a major part of the quarterback position. And early on in one of the first drives, he just barely overthrew Connor Hayward. He fully extended. He tried to catch it. He didn't complete the catch. He dropped it on the way to the ground. Then we saw on a drive shortly thereafter where he had Darnell Washington, and the guy trailing him was drastically shorter, and instead of putting a little air under the ball, he puts it on a rope. Darnell's unable to get 2 hands on it, which means you really overthrew it if you got it so high that a 6'7" guy can't get 2 hands on it. And there was another one later on in the game where he was unable to get it within the reach of Connor Hayward. And it's such a frustrating thing for me with Connor, because I love Connor Hayward, and he even contributed a touchdown in this game.
Mm-hmm.
But there were at least twice in this game that the fact that he isn't at least 6'2" or 6'3" meant that it was an incomplete pass because it just was too far outside of his range. And a 6'2" or 6'3" tight end is a short tight end. He's only 6 foot, and it just creates a difficult situation when your quarterback already isn't the most accurate guy in the world. You need a good wingspan out of people. You need a good catching radius. And that is hurting him a little bit. I felt accuracy was Justin Fields' biggest issue in this game. I was happy with the fact that he didn't turn it over like he's been doing. We didn't have the snap issue, right? The no center exchange.
Yep.
With the quarterback issue. That's a nice step in the right direction. But way too many times making the wrong decision, scrambling into pressure again instead of standing in a clean pocket and delivering a pass, missing people that were open and throwing to somebody that's covered. I thought it was a regression game for Justin Fields. And even the touchdowns, like, I'm happy that he has 2 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, but Connor Hayward was wide open and Pat Freiermuth was a shuffle pass. So neither one of these were difficult passes.
Yeah, Dylan, what were you going to say?
It's frustrating how he can be so accurate some of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've seen his accuracy improve over the course of the year so far, up until this game.
He makes beautiful throws in the super tight NFL windows, but then there's times where he's just overthrowing people.
Yeah.
I would. It's just a little too fast for him.
Yeah, I would argue the Connor Hayward one wasn't overthrown. He got both hands on it. That first pass early, James. I understand that he had to extend for it when in reality there was enough space between him and his guy that he probably couldn't. He shouldn't have had to. But that one's hard to blame on Justin when you have 2 hands on it, you bring it into your chest, and then the ground causes the fumble or the slipperiness of the ball. We had that massive rainstorm before the game where the game was delayed almost an hour and a half. So that one's hard to blame on him. I understand the Darnell one completely and agree completely. You put a little bit of air on that. There's no safety to help in that situation. Give him some time to go high point that ball. I think if we do that in half the time that Darnell Washington's in the game, we'd get more points. But yeah, no, I agree, James. Justin Fields was not as accurate as he previously was in other games. And I think I'm just coming to his defense because I know that people are calling for Russell Wilson to take the starting role now. And we'll get into that after the game recap and share our thoughts. But Justin Fields by far did not cause the loss in this game. I don't want to blame it on him by any means. Najee Harris in the running game, another very poor production game out of him. They took him out more often than I expected in this game as well. 14 carries for 42 yards, 3-yard average. Aaron Champlin came in, ran 4 carries for 14 yards, 3.5 average. And then Jonathan Ward had 2 carries for 9 yards with a 4.5-yard average. Justin Fields also scrambled 6 times for 27 yards. No touchdowns on the board for the running back room. But James and Dylan, this just felt like a very blah game, to say the least, out of our running game.
Yeah, for sure. And we started to finally see some actual orchestrated quarterback run plays,
Mm-hmm.
as to where previously all his runs were scrambles off of pass plays. We saw some drawn up plays for it and to some success, but I don't like the hits that he's taking.
Nope.
If you're going to do this, you need to draw it up so that he's getting one-on-ones with defensive backs, corners, and safeties. He's taking really hard hits from linebackers and defensive linemen. That's not going to be a good formula for getting him to last an entire season. If you want to continue doing this, you need to find a way to get him in more open space to the outside, rather than him lowering a shoulder versus a linebacker trying to get that one extra yard, which I appreciate his toughness. The kid runs really tough. He runs like a fullback, but a quarterback that runs like a fullback ends up on the injured reserve, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. I think go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think the run game's been disappointing the last few weeks, other than Cordella Patterson. He was popping off, and then he got injured. It's just odd to me because it's the same line, and it seems like every rush was going for 5, 6, 7 yards. And then he went down. It's weird how slow Najee's been.
Yeah, and James discussed that a little bit last week, how when Najee's in there, they bring more in the box. But you have to imagine, we're practicing this during the week, right? Like, we're bringing more guys in the box and showing these looks that we should be getting on game day. I don't understand how people are still... There were so many times in the run game last night that I saw our offensive linemen turned around facing Najee. It happened so often where they were getting ripped and swam through. And I was like, what is happening? How does this, like, if we have to double team one of these guys, especially with them missing their two best defensive linemen, I don't understand how we're getting in these situations where we're just getting beat so bad and Najee's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage. Najee Harris is very much like Derrick Henry, and we understand you have to give them running room. You have to let them get going, and we just can't do it. I don't know if we're not scheming it correctly, if we need to use different blockers, different tight ends, a fullback, whatever it needs to be. The one thing I will say, James, we talked about the fourth down conversion they tried to do last week or 2 weeks ago when they didn't put anyone behind or in front, no lead blocker and no one behind Justin Fields to push the pile. Well, this week, they must have been listening to the show, James, because they put Pat Freiermuth right on his butt. And when they snapped that ball, I mean, Pat just pushed him right through. And it worked perfectly. Mm-hmm. When you have 4th and 1, even 4th and 2, to some, sometimes if you put someone in the position like that to push, it's hard to deny that unless you're going up against like Haloti Ngata, which thankfully he's retired, or Ndamukong Suh, or some of these big guys. They didn't have anyone like that, and I'm happy that they changed that up a little bit.
And experience goes a long way in those situations too. And if you watch back on that play from like an aerial view, you'll see Isaac Seumalo get an incredible push. And that goes with his experience with the Philadelphia Eagles and them running that successfully for so many years. They understood low man wins submarine. It isn't about driving your guy backwards. It's about getting into his legs so that he can't produce any drive and your quarterback can push his way through.
Yeah.
So Isaac Seumalo was a good like yard and a half in front of everybody else, which allowed somewhere for Justin Fields to go. And I don't think, honestly, Freiermuth even really had to push him all that much because of the generated area there by both Seumalo and Frazier right next to him. So excellent job by the blockers on that play. And like you said, it's a good idea to have somebody behind him that can push in case you do hit a wall, kind of spin off one way or another and try to surge for that last second. Also, I kind of want to say with the running game woes right now, I feel like when Najee's on the field, they're just loading the box almost every single time. And we're seeing the last 2 weeks what the solution to this is. Najee is actually really, really gifted as a receiver out of the back.
Yep.
And he's not being used that way the last couple of years because of how successful Jaylen Warren has been. And nobody was saying, take Jaylen Warren off of the field. We shouldn't. Jaylen Warren was an excellent player, but now that he's injured and Najee's getting some of these receiving options, we're seeing him in the open field break these short 5-yard catches off for 15, 20, 25 yards sometimes. I think early in a game, you should pound the pass to Najee Harris, forcing them to back off a little bit, and then it's going to open up some running room. I think they're playing ultra aggressive early, knowing that we're going to want to run the ball and giving them nowhere to go. Well, screw it, man. Just go pass on every play for a little while. And particularly, throw it to Najee on a regular. Start hitting him on some of those quick in routes where he goes out and then immediately in. Those are almost impossible for linebackers to cover. Pop them open and throw it to him 4 or 5 times on the first drive. And I bet you they back off a little and stop putting a safety or two in the box on every play.
I mean, you're talking about it right now. Let's go there. Najee led the team in receiving yards with 35 on 2
That's
catches,
horrible.
35 yards. That is so pitiful. And I don't want to say that, and we'll talk to Dylan. We'll talk about this at some point. We were throwing the ball more on first down. We were throwing the ball more in the game. We were taking shots downfield that I like. The early one to Connor Hayward, the one down the field to Van Jefferson, couple down the field to George Pickens. We had the line drive to Darnell Washington that was a little high. I'm excited to see us taking these shots, and we're not missing by much. And I want to make sure we don't. And James, you messaged this to me during the game. You kind of took a few shots and missed, and they pulled him back again. They reserved him again. They kind of changed the game plan a little bit and stopped taking shots. Even doing that is going to force teams to back off the run game a little bit when we can have those successful pass games. But when your running back has 2 receptions for 35 yards and is leading the team, nobody's going to back up on that. There's no reason to.
Most of that's yards after catch, too. Let's be real.
Yep.
Those were short passes that he got a lot of yards after the catch on. And that's embarrassing when 35 yards is the most receiving yards by any of your offensive players.
Yep.
And it's only off of 2 catches. I like throwing the ball down the field, but we got to be better selective on who we're throwing to when we do it. A 6-foot tight end, your number 2 wide receiver who wouldn't be the 3rd or 4th on a lot of squads. Why are we not throwing deep balls to George Pickens? All he got all game long was quick outs. And no wonder he was pissed by the end of the game and grabbing the opposing guy by the face mask. I get it, man. This is a deep ball guy who got nothing but quick slants and quick outs all game long and really didn't get a whole lot of playing time either.
Nope.
And then you're wondering why you're not putting any points on the board. You're wondering why you're not moving the ball. I don't know. Maybe throw it to the most talented guy on offense and it'll happen.
Maybe.
I saw that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dylan. All you.
I saw that George Pickens only played 60% of the offensive snaps, and I thought his stat line was pitiful. What did he have? 26 yards.
Yeah, 26 yards on 3 catches. He on 7 targets.
Yeah, it just makes no sense why you wouldn't feed him if he's clearly the most talented guy out there.
Yeah. I mean,
even catch radius,
Yep. I mean, my thing is,
he has the catch radius.
If you take him out and he only plays 60%, that's the defense already not having to guard somebody. Like having George out there, you have to debate or think about putting double coverage or at least having a safety high over top.
No doubt.
If he's not on the field, you can jam the box all game long. You don't have to worry about getting beat deep. Who's beating you?
Nobody.
None of these other guys are separating from the defenders.
Nope.
Even Matt Canada kept him out there running go routes, at least taking defenders away.
Yeah. Well, and then that leads into the question that we'll ask later. Like, what's the? Let's ask it now. What's the issue with this offense? Is it play calling? Is it execution of the plays? Is it some kind of combination of both? Is it personnel? I mean, what do you guys think?
I think part of the run game woes right now are the injuries on the offensive line,
100%,
and lack of execution in going away from, like, the first few weeks we saw a lot of successful deep passes. It seemed like at least once or twice a game George Pickens was catching a 30 or 40-yard pass. I haven't seen that at all lately.
Nope.
We're not getting the big plays passing the ball. And when you don't get any big plays passing the ball and everything is condensed 5-10 yards as far as the actual completions, because like you guys said, they took some shots. For like the deep shot to Van Jefferson, he underthrew by about 10 yards. And then the other ones, were barely on the outstretched arms of Connor Hayward. Only one hand can get to it on Darnell Washington. It's just really not good looking plays. And part of it is definitely execution. And part of it is just, you got to take those shots. Sometimes it doesn't look like the the formula is there. It doesn't look like it's going to be a winning play, and you got to take the shot anyway, just to keep them honest. Because if you don't ever take it just because you don't think it's going to work, well, guess what? You just told them that they don't have to back up.
Yep. Yeah, I don't. There's so many issues and frustrations that I have with this game. Last week I had an issue with the timeout not being called on the 4th down conversion that they were trying to go for and not come up with a play. And this week I had an issue with the timeout that was called at the end of the game on defense because the defense apparently didn't have a proper play call. Those are the kind of things, because that changed the last drive completely. The last drive we had 20 seconds on the clock and we were unable to use the middle of the field due to not having a timeout. If you have that one timeout, you can use the middle of the field, run and get some extra yards and get Boz into a really long field goal potentially option, or even set up a nice second down with a quick out. But with that timeout, that completely changed how we manage that. Now I understand why you had to take a timeout, because the defense wasn't set. They didn't know what they were doing necessarily, and Mike Tomlin was uncomfortable with it. But that's not an excuse for it to happen. The defense is an NFL defense. The Dallas Cowboys had already called a timeout, so the clock was stopped, and then we wasted our last and final timeout in that moment. That was frustrating to me. Again, I'm that's a little bit off the offensive side of it, but again, like we talked about in the pregame episode or the preview episode, this was the 5th different offensive line group put together in 5 games. So there's no chemistry in the offensive line. I think personnel is an issue. James, you and I have talked about that with the, the 6th offensive lineman they bring in sometimes. Now this time when they did it, it was Spencer Anderson. That was a good thing. We wanted that.
It's better.
But I don't know what needs to change. I don't know if, and a lot of people are saying, and I'm even questioning it. I don't know for certain, but is Mike Tomlin handicapping what this offense will do with what he wants to do? Or is it, is Arthur Smith handicapping Justin Fields with what he wants him to do with certain things? I don't know where that disconnect comes from, or what's happening with the play calling, or not taking shots downfield, or not having George Pickens in. Because Mike Tomlin talked about it, and Mike Tomlin said he wanted to increase the quality of play from George, so he reduced the quantity of playing. But that doesn't make sense in my mind, especially when he's in there. You're not throwing it to him deep anyways. So I don't know. I definitely have questions. I definitely have concerns, but I don't think we're going to find those out until maybe next week or the week after. But let's finish up talking about these receivers real quick. Unless, Dylan, you have anything to say about that? The offensive woes?
I was just going to agree with James about the line and all the different people playing on it. And I also agree with you. I think Tomlin is so conservative with not wanting to take risky shots down the field. Like that throw to Van Jefferson, that deep shot that was 10 yards short and almost picked off, I'm sure he was cringing. Mm-hmm. That is not what he wants them to be doing. So I think, in a sense, he almost handicaps them. Just my opinion.
Yeah. And I don't know we'll know that.
I'd push back on that a little bit and say if Justin throws a better ball, Tomlin doesn't cringe.
Yeah,
no doubt.
So the execution of the play is exactly why he doesn't want it done again. If that is the case, if it is Mike Tomlin saying, hey, let's chill out on the deep balls, well, throw a better deep ball and he'll let you continue throwing it.
Yeah, right.
Jefferson's a big, tall dude, man. You get that out in front of him, and that's an easy play.
Yeah, no, you're right.
We talked about Najee, 2 receptions for 35. Van Jefferson and George Pickens both had 3 receptions for 26 yards this game. Van Jefferson targeted 5 times. George Pickens targeted 7. Connor Hayward, 2 for 23 with the 1 touchdown on 4 targets. Pat Freiermuth, 3 for 3 for 22 in the touchdown, that 1 shuffle pass. Brandon Johnson, the practice squad guy that was brought up, had 1 catch for 9 yards. Did a good job of fighting for extra yards, too, I thought, on that play. Calvin Austin 1 for 6 and Darnell Washington 1 for 5. They have Zach Frazier listed here for some reason. We're not going to even talk about that. I'm assuming I don't know.
Recover a fumble? Is that what that is?
It had to have been. No, he didn't, because Justin Fields recovered his own fumble. I don't know what that is. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's very weird.
But again, the lack of productivity here is just a show of the entire offense's lack of productivity. When you're not running the ball well, you're not going to have time to pass. When you don't have time to pass, you can't let plays progress. Don't get me wrong. We don't want him to sit back there for 5 seconds every time he goes back. He needs to have a quick release. He needs to feel the pressure. He needs to get the ball out of there. But you're also not utilizing your best players. I mean, George Pickens having 26 yards is just pitiful, in my opinion. Najee Harris leading the team. That would be fine for me if he caught 5 or 6 balls and was leading the team in receptions, but it's all in 2 catches. So I don't know. James, you want to transition?
I think there's some underusage here too with Calvin Austin III. I know
100%.
he's not the most gifted. He's not like the most gifted player in the world, but his speed is unparalleled. So let's start running a bunch of drag routes and slant routes with him. Make people try to stay with him. Put him in a track situation. Put him in a foot race with people all game long, and he's gonna pop open. So I don't know, just having him running a normal route tree all the time when you're struggling this much to get a productive offense seems kind of crazy. You might want to start taking some plays out of the Chiefs playbook and out of the Dolphins playbook of what they did with Tyreek Hill and Xavier Worthy and some of these other extremely fast dudes.
Yeah.
Where you put them in motion and then throw it to him quickly after the snap and a very quick change of direction. Stuff like this where you can utilize that ultra athleticism that this guy has. He's just being used in a regular manner. And that is reflected in a 1 catch for 6 yards, you know?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, Calvin also ran a 4.32. He's not slow. But I don't feel like we're experiencing his actual speed in any way, shape, or form. And hoping to get him the ball more often moving forward. James, you want to transition over to the offensive line? We talked a little bit about stuff. Isaac Seumalo struggled at first, got ran over at one point. James, yeah, he got blown over at one point. James, you made a good point. And people who maybe don't know much about sports medicine or pectoral tears or issues may not understand this. But James, go ahead and talk about why you think he was struggling early in the game.
Yeah, so when you think about it, a pectoral injury, if you're not familiar with it, that's your chest muscle, right? So one of the 2 chest muscles, not sure which one it is, it doesn't really matter in this case. When you're recovering from an injury like that, that means you're not doing anything weightlifting-wise for your upper body at all. You can't. Because if you do, you're going to make it worse. You might tear it, and when you tear it, that means muscle coming off of the bone. Then you're talking surgery. You could be out for the entire season. So one thing he's not able to do is lift weights to maintain or increase his strength, which means naturally you're going to lose some of that. So some of that physicality is just going to naturally not be where it was previously due to the fact that he wasn't able to work out for basically a month there. So that's, I think, partially to do with what happened there. And that would also explain why when he won on that tush push play, it was a technique thing. He was able to dive, submerge, get below everybody else, rely on his technique. He didn't have to rely on brute strength. So I think this is going to be some growing pains with Isaac as he gets that strength back. It might take him a month or even after the bye week before we see him back to that more dominant strength of what he had previous to the injury.
Yeah. Overall, the offensive line, I thought Zach Frazier had himself a pretty good game for the most part. Broderick Jones got beat a couple times inside, and it was just frustrating to see. I don't know. Again, this goes back to the question, and I almost want to go rewatch the game. I don't know if we're missing blocks on these running assignments, if we're not holding the gaps open enough, or if they're just not big enough for Najee to fit through. I don't know what the issues are, but I would like to see us improve the running game because that's going to be the best way to help, whether it's Russell or Justin. Either way, getting this running game going is going to help the passing game immensely.
Mm-hmm.
Anything
and I
else?
think a little bit of consistency with having the same 5 guys is going to help a lot.
Yeah.
Because they're just getting comfortable with each other. I mean, Mason McCormick's getting his feet wet as an NFL offensive lineman. It takes a little bit knowing what the guy next to you is going to do, where his hand placement is going to be versus yours. So you're not tripping over each other with your feet. There's a lot going on here that I think is contributing to these issues right now with both protection and with opening holes on the offensive line. And I think some of this is going to work itself out because they are some good offensive linemen, but it's difficult. One thing that I did take as a takeaway though, Zach Frazier, according to PFF, is the 3rd best rated center in the entire NFL right now. That's pretty promising to see.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll take that. James, anything else on offensive line as a whole, or do you want to move to defensive line?
Nah, let's move to the defensive line so I can start complaining again.
Oh, here we go. All right. Yeah, I mean, defensive line, the high point was definitely Cam Hayward. Cam Hayward hit the quarterback once, had 4 total tackles. Outside of that, it was a kind of quiet game. Montravius Adams almost made a big play at one point, stopping a running back in the backfield, but missed the tackle, unfortunately. Outside of that, Larry Ogunjobi had a tackle for loss, but other than that, a quiet game. And then we got to see Dean Lowry and DeMarvin Leal, and Keanu Benton obviously played. Keanu Benton had a pass breakup too, which was really good.
It was right after Renegade.
Yep.
First play after Renegade. Benton knocked it down in typical Steeler fashion. I was disappointed with the defensive line from a pass rush perspective, and maybe even more so from stopping the run.
Yeah.
I feel like we got some really good effort out of the middle linebackers and even out of the safeties. Once again, we're going to look at this and see both Minkah Fitzpatrick and Deshaun Elliott's names at the top of the tackle list, which you don't want to see. But this week we did see Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson both up there as well. So these guys are starting to clean it up. But I think Larry Ogunjobi, either the groin was bothering him, realized, nor near the later portions of the game, he really wasn't even playing. And when the two best plays that we can talk about in this game is a tipped pass, a tackle for loss, and a blocked field goal from our defensive line unit, we didn't get the production that we needed out of these guys. And way too many times they just ran right down the field on us, and the defensive linemen were just not helping a lot in slowing it down. Some of this is, again, going to be schematic. They're on a 3 wide receiver set, and they're running because we're in nickel, and they know we only have 2 defensive linemen out there.
Yep.
So maybe we need to adjust our nickel defense and only have 1 middle linebacker out there and 3 defensive linemen.
Yep.
Or maybe you pull one of the edge rushers and slide Cam Hayward out, or you slide Larry Ogunjobi out and still keep 2 middle linebackers, but have 3 defensive linemen and TJ Watt. You got to do something different. You can't continue with your nickel defense with just 2 defensive linemen. All these teams are just running the snot out of the ball whenever we get our nickel out there. And so what? Deshaun Elliott's just supposed to get 15 tackles instead of 12? That's the solution? Minkah's supposed to get 13 instead of only 11? Like, come on. The safeties can't be relied on being the primary run stoppers. That's how you lose games.
Yeah. Really, really hope to see more. Again, we did like seeing that blocked field goal out of Isaiah Loudermilk. He got his hand up there. That was really fun to see. And that was a momentum shift. But unfortunately, again, no points off that blocked field goal. It was the 3 and out. We gave the ball right back. With that being said, we can move.
I'll give Loudermilk credit as well on the goal line attempted stand where Landon Roberts made that awesome hit and forced the fumble. Loudermilk got a lot of penetration on that play.
Okay.
So he is getting a lot more playing time. He is starting to make some impact in games. We're just still not seeing it as far as rushing the passer. And he still just kind of looks like a dude out there. I want to see a little bit more from him by now. He's been in the league like 4 years. So it's time to start making some splash and make your impact.
Yeah. Moving to the middle linebacker room. Obviously, we already talked a little bit about Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson getting tackles. They both had 9 tackles on the game. They were very, very heavily involved with the game. And Landon Roberts looked slow, but he did have some good run stops while he was there. He made some good plays. Again, I don't know if at some point, James, you texted me this during the game, at some point, do they make the full-time switch to Peyton Wilson? I feel like he gives us kind of the best of both worlds without being a glaring red flag on the defense if they switch up to a passing situation.
And ironically, the 2 best run stops by the middle linebackers in this game were from Landon Roberts and Peyton Wilson.
Yep.
We saw Peyton Wilson slice underneath an offensive lineman and hit a running back in the backfield for a loss. And then at the goal line on that very last drive, we saw kamikaze style with Landon Roberts diving over the pile and crushing the running back, and the ball popped out. And unfortunately, nobody from Pittsburgh was able to jump on that ball. Otherwise, we're talking about a Steelers victory right now because they would have just run the clock out at that point.
Yep. I thought Troy got fat, cut his hair, and came back and flew through the air on that play. That was crazy.
right? And the first part of that is why he's probably on his way out, right? If you're saying he got fat and now he looks like he landed,
Yep.
well, yeah. Just I think that the game is so fast. It's tough for Landon Roberts to make a big impact. I think he's going to be important when you play against Baltimore, because you need somebody that can just go in there and put their nose down and smash into Derrick Henry as hard as they possibly can. I think that's going to be a good game for him. But a lot of these other games, he's just overmatched, especially when it's move tight ends like this team had, a couple of quicker tight ends that are able to get out there and running backs with a little speed too. It's just not a good game for him. You got to go with a different direction. But I liked the improvement from Peyton Wilson, right? We need to see what the future is in this middle linebacker room. I thought it was a better game for Patrick Queen, a lot more involved, a lot of tackles.
Yep.
Still looking for some splash plays from Patrick, though, right? We're not getting the interceptions, the tip passes, the forced fumbles. We need some of that from him.
Yeah, 100%. Dylan, anything to add to the middle linebacker room?
He pretty much covered it. I thought Peyton Wilson looked a lot better in the run. And I also feel that big money guy, Patrick Queen, it'd be nice to see him provide some splash.
Yeah.
Even just strip a ball away. I mean, he's getting a lot of tackles.
Yeah. I feel like that's what we brought him in there for. And I feel like he hasn't.
Oh no,
Not that he hasn't shown his worth yet, but I feel like we just expected more out of him at this point, especially with the defense that is already in place. It feels like it's almost easier for him to make plays because there's so many other people making plays that he could kind of just fall in line or to have an easy shot with TJ getting double teamed or chipped or whatever. There's so many other areas for him to attack. But speaking of TJ, let's move to the outside linebacker room. TJ Watt had 1.5 sacks on the game. Did hit his 100 career sacks. He's now at 101 on the career. And forced fumble, hit the quarterback 3 times, 8 total tackles in the game. Unfortunately, could not take over in the end and get to the quarterback and get the sack in that last drive. But man, he got close a couple times. And I think TJ and Nick Herbig both had a phenomenal game. They met at the quarterback twice. I'm surprised Nick Herbig only got a half sack. I thought they were both going to get 2 halves. So I'm impressed with that.
Yeah, it must be that he got there just before him on that second one. Because I think the first one they registered as a half sack for both. So I think it was the second one where TJ got the full sack on that. But yeah, it was looking like we were going to see a whole game of meet you at the quarterback. And then unfortunately, Nick Herbig injures a hamstring in this game. It doesn't look good. We'll learn more tomorrow with Mike Tomlin's press conference. Usually he gives you a little better idea on what the severity of some of these injuries might be. My guess is this hamstring injury is going to be something to knock him out for at least a month, maybe more. But then shortly after that, the Marvin Leal went down.
Yep.
And it, referred to as a neck, possibly stinger injury. Not really sure. Again, we'll get more insight on that tomorrow. But that's scary, man, because Alex Highsmith doesn't look like he's even remotely close to ready to come back. If one of these two isn't ready for next week, you are razor thin. And teams are just going to double and triple TJ and take him out of the game, man, because they're not going to fear Jeremiah Moon, who was laying on his stomach getting pancaked on the final play of the game last night.
Yep.
They don't fear that guy, right? And there's nobody out there in free agency right now that you can go get, unless you can get Marcus Golden to come out of retirement, maybe. I don't know.
He retired so fast in this preseason. I don't think that's a possibility.
Neither do I.
No, and it's like exciting to see the play that we've gotten to see out of TJ Watt, Nick Herbig, and Alex Highsmith. But then when you got 2 of those guys down. Even TJ Watt came out of this game for a while with that potential injury and was resting over there on the sideline for a little bit. If TJ goes down, we're in trouble. And I don't know what we're gonna do in that situation. Obviously you sign somebody, you bring somebody in, you elevate somebody, whatever you got to do. But man, this offensive or this outside linebacker room is taking a beating right now. And it's one of the highlights on the defense. So that's very unfortunate.
I think if they get creative here, maybe a little Peyton Wilson on passing rushing situations out at outside linebacker might be a solution to help.
Yeah.
But it's not a long-term solution. That's a short-term solution.
Mm-hmm. Dylan, what were you going to say?
Dylan, go ahead.
Did it look to you guys like they moved TJ around a little bit more than usual.
I saw him
They
coming
did.
through the front or through the inside line a little bit more than normal. Yeah.
He also dropped in the coverage, which he's done that before, but it's rare to see.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was just
Yeah.
interesting to me. Coming through the middle, almost standing upright on one of those plays too.
Yeah. Ironically enough, the last time we played Dallas was CeeDee Lamb's rookie year, and they tried to send TJ Watt out to cover him, and CeeDee Lamb got a touchdown on him. So that was a fun time.
I think typically the only time you see TJ do that is in like third and short situation, fourth and short, when he's trying to help stack up the middle of that defensive line to prevent an interior run. So I was actually excited to see him get moved around a little bit in this game because that does make it more difficult for them to double team and ship him.
Yeah.
So if
mean,
he's
why
pass
not?
rushing from different, yeah. If you don't know where he's coming from, you don't know where to send the second blocker, right? So that's something that he's always just lined up on his side, and maybe once a game switch to the other side. So moving him around a little bit is nice, but I think once the injuries started stacking up, they stopped playing around with that.
Yeah. Oh, moving on to the fun part of this, the secondary. I'm going to go safeties first because I need to talk about something semi-decent. Minka Fitzpatrick and Deshaun Elliott leading the team in tackles, 10 and 9 respectively. Minka had a pass breakup. Deshaun Elliott had a pass breakup. They weren't phenomenal this game, but they did their part for lack of anything else. I mean, Deshaun Elliott was in there involved in a lot of tackles inside the box and the running plays. Minka was stopping a lot of receiving things and getting receivers down to the ground without them getting in the end zone. There was one time where Joey Porter even went to just punch a ball out instead of make a tackle, and that was frustrating. Just a lot of things out of the secondary that I feel like Minka and Deshaun aren't getting to shine the way that we want them to because they're having to play almost defensively. They have to play defensively when I want them to play an offensive defensive style. I want to go get the ball. I want to go get the player, but they have to play so quote unquote scared or reserved because of the lack of ability or creating of plays we're getting from the other skill making positions on defense, specifically the cornerback room, that it's tough. It is tough to watch sometimes.
And it's frustrating for me because we saw Deshaun Elliott the first few games just look incredible, right? And it was because he was able to kind of run in play safety and overhang and jump on those balls that were poorly thrown, maybe a tipped pass, and even jump on some routes when somebody else is in coverage. Both touchdowns in this game, Deshaun Elliott somehow ended up in man coverage one-on-one with a receiver.
Yep.
The first one, he stumbled. You can't really be mad. He just lost his footing, and his receiver ended up wide open in the corner of the end zone. The second one, that last touchdown at the end of the game, that was a wide receiver that went in motion, and the defense, for some reason, didn't have a corner go with him. They passed it off to Deshaun Elliott, and he had excellent coverage, but the ball was thrown perfectly. You can't really be that mad at him on that one either, but in the end, they got 2 touchdowns, and both of them were given up by Deshaun Elliott, and I think we just put them in bad situations, man. That's where the corners are supposed to be taking over. They're supposed to be covering those guys.
Yep.
And the worst part about this is you look at the game at the end, and you see an interception by Dante Jackson on a horribly thrown football. So he gets a stat line that makes it look like he had a great game when he was getting beat left and right. Joey Porter Jr. gets himself a real nice interception in the game, right? Again, not the best thrown ball in the world, but Joey made the play. He got the pick. He got a little bit of a return on it as well. But the secondary, I thought the corners really let us down in this game. And Beanie Bishop just had his worst game of the season.
Yep.
Minus 1 good run tackle, and he did get 1 deflected pass, I believe, in this game very early on as well. Just continuously looking like he was out of position, not able to run with guys he's trying to cover. And he's a fast guy. He was like a 4.45 or something. He's not a slow dude, but he's struggling in man coverage. I don't know if he's just comfortable with what he's doing, if he's having a tough time understanding his assignments, or what it is. But there really isn't anybody else to put out there either, and that's kind of scary.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, and I kind of just processed this in the moment while you were talking about it, James. I feel like there's a lack of trust on defense. I feel like every player doesn't trust that the other player is going to play their job correctly, and people are trying to do too much, and it's putting them out of position, or they're just trying to go make a play instead of just doing their role. You know, a lot of time they talk about staying home, they talk about getting home, they talk about doing your job. And on defense, I feel like that's mostly talked about on defense and the offensive line. If you block your guy and I block mine, this will be successful. On defense, if you guard your zone and I guard mine, or if you guard your man and I guard mine, that's a successful defense. I feel like somewhere there's a disconnect. I don't know if it's a lack of mistrust, if it's the lack of chemistry, if it's uncomfort, whatever it is that is causing this defense to not mesh the way they were early and often. And it could simply come from last week. You know, last week they gave up the most amount of points they've given up in a single game. And then maybe they're struggling now. Maybe there's a mental gap. Maybe there's a mental blockage. I don't know. But the defense has to get together, watch some film, and just discuss. If I was a head coach or the defensive coordinator, I would just sit them in a room and let them watch every single play from the 22-man camera. Give Cam Hayward the remote and say, pause it and play it whenever you need. And just let the defensive room talk. Let them communicate with each other. Let them figure it out. Sometimes I feel like you can overcoach things. This defense is full of veterans. This defense is full of playmakers. I think you just got to let them figure it out what the heck they're doing and start trusting each other. Like, send them to paintball. Let them go, let them go shoot each other for a little bit with paintball guns and get some frustration out. Do something team building exercise and then go watch film. I don't know. This is me just spitballing here about some creativity and ways to get them back on board. But I felt like a lot of the issues we saw yesterday was people either trying to do too much or not trusting that someone else would do their job correctly. So I don't know if you guys have anything to say about.
I think we're seeing some issues with the pass offs in zone too, where sometimes some of the younger guys, whether it be Beanie Bishop or Joey Porter, are just either not passing somebody off fast enough and then getting to their actual responsibility of the guy in the flat or the guy in the out or whatever. And so you're seeing a situation where two people are covering somebody and then no one's covering the guy in the flat that's wide open. So I think that's some stuff that's just either it's going to get better as the season goes on, or somebody's going to get benched and we're going to get answers that way on who's responsible for the blown coverages.
Yep.
But I think when you look at the secondary, I mean, you've got an undrafted rookie nickel corner in Beanie Bishop, and you've got a second-year corner in Joey Porter Jr., who's a second-round pick, who seems to be a really high-quality corner. I think a lot of our mistakes are coming right now from those guys just getting comfortable with the defense, and a lot more from Beanie Bishop than Joey Porter, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to say about this secondary room. Dylan, you got anything?
When does Sutton come back? 10?
It'll be week 10, right?
Week. Yeah, he'll be back at week 10. Yeah, because we have a bye week on 9 and it's an 8-game suspension.
Yep.
Whose job will he take upon his return?
Beanie's.
Beanie Bishop.
Definitely Beanie Bishop.
He got walked deep on one of those plays.
Yeah, literally lost. You saw him turn around like he didn't know where the heck he was.
Yeah.
That was very, very, very unfortunate. With that being said, let's move on to special teams here for a second. Aaron Shamplin had 4 kick returns for 101 yards. I didn't think he looked bad. No big playmaking there, but he didn't put us in any kind of crazy situation either. No punt returns on the game. Boswell was 1 for 1 on field goals. Shocker there. 2 for 2 on extra points. And then Corliss Waitman had 5 punts for 222 yards, 44.4 average. One was a touchback. 2 were inside the 20. It was a decent game for the punting game. I'm upset that he had to punt 5 times, but it was a decent game for him. Outside of that, I mean, let's have the discussion before we end the show. At this point, Justin Fields led the team to 3-0, and now we're sitting here at 3-2. Justin Fields has yet to throw an interception that we personally feel was his fault. Granted, 2 passes he threw yesterday could have been picked off. Is this officially moving forward? Justin Fields, is Justin Fields now on the bench? Is Russell Wilson going to start next week? What do you guys think? Dylan, I'm going to let you go first.
I hope it's Justin Fields. I think he's showing enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think even though we lost against the Colts, he almost willed that game to victory. I think he's showing enough. I hope they stick with him. I think he could potentially be the future if he keeps it up.
Yeah. James?
I think that what we're seeing the last 2 weeks from Justin Fields is a tendency to be a better quarterback in the second half than in the first half. He's coming out a little bit inaccurate at the beginning of games, not as decisive as he needs to be, and drives just aren't continuing and they aren't happening, and we're not scoring enough points in the first half. So the real question is, how long is it okay to get one good half of football out of your quarterback and not get a lot of points? At what point in time are you going to say, hey, I need 4 good quarters of football? And is it going to go back to 4 good quarters of football? I think you give them one more game. I think you give them the game against the Raiders. If you again see only one half of good quality football from him, you have to start considering Russell Wilson, especially if it's another loss. If we're talking about 3 losses in a row where the first half performance is just not very good, in the second half last week was incredible, right? That might have been the best performance of Justin Fields' career, is the second half of that game against the Colts. But the first half was so bad that even that kind of performance wasn't enough to win the game.
Yeah.
So we got to get more out of that consistently if you want to win more than 9 games on a season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm with both of you. I think Justin Fields hasn't done enough to lose the job at this point. I think you stick with him, especially if you think he's your future. Don't do what Chicago and every other team has done, where they've put somebody in there, and then when they struggle a little bit, they're like, well, take the bench, because that can demoralize somebody and defeat them. And there's something to be said about when you're a professional athlete, you need to have the emotional and mental maturity to handle those things. But at the same time, I don't think, again, he's single-handedly lost these games. I don't think he's done anything that has specifically put the team in a horrible position, or that he's made a very bad choice. He hasn't even thrown bad balls where I thought he put a player in danger at this point. So I think right now the problem is right now is a very easy spot to make that transition. Right now is an easy spot to say, hey, 2 losses. We don't want to go 500 in the first 6 games. We're going to let Russell take this next game and roll with it. But I really think that does more bad than good, or more harm than good, to the team and to Justin. I think you stick with him for at least this next Raiders game. And it's hard to say anything too about it when he's out here with a rushing game that can't break 100 yards, with receivers that don't break 20, 30 yards receiving. Now you can say that's, Justin too. But he's so close to making some of these plays. The pass to Darnell, if you change that a little bit, that's a touchdown potentially. The pass to Connor Hayward, if Connor grabs that, or you throw it just a little bit shorter, that's a big play. The pass to Van Jefferson, if you throw that a little bit more downfield, that's a massive play. Get George Pickens in there, this game might be different as a whole. And especially with the way the defense has been struggling and giving up that 4th down touchdown. It's not like Justin Fields is out here losing these games. And like you said against the Colts, Dylan, we talked about on the show, he almost willed that last drive for a touchdown and won that game. So I'm on board with sticking with Justin Fields for now. I understand that it's a week-to-week thing, whether Mike Tomlin wants to say it's because of Russell Wilson's health or whatever. It's a week-to-week decision right now, because I think Russell Wilson's been healthy for a while. I think they're just using it as an excuse to kind of roll with Justin for now. And I think Russell, as the mature veteran, understands that and has been rolling with it as well. He's not going to say I'm healthy, because that throws Mike Tomlin and the team right under the bus. So I'm going to be interested to see. You got something to say. I'm excited for it, James.
I think low key, Russ is playing the good citizen and the good teammate. But this week he put out a recording on Instagram of himself full sprinting on a treadmill. So I think he's getting tired of sitting on the bench.
Okay.
Yeah.
I stand corrected a little bit.
I think he's trying to put a little pressure on them, because he's said all the right things. He really has. He's not complaining. He's saying, "Yep, if it's my time, it's my time." He's doing everything right. But I think that low key was him saying, "Hey, team's starting to struggle. When you need me, I'm ready."
Yeah.
And my question to you, Cody, is if Pittsburgh loses again this week, Justin Fields start, Pittsburgh loses, Justin plays the whole game, do you start him versus the Jets? Is 3 losses in a row enough for you to go to Russell, or do you need
it
a
depends
fourth
on
one?
where those losses are coming from. If we
got less than 20 points again and less than 150 passing yards again.
What is the rushing game looks like? If the rushing
95 yards rushing.
It's tough to say. It depends on the passes, the completions. Like
what if he's at 52% completion again like he was this game?
I think 2 games in a row like that, you have to kind of make the decision to move on from him to at least give Russell a chance. Now again, that's very situational. I mean, 50%, you could have some balls knocked down at the line of scrimmage. You could have some drops by wide receivers. There's always something else that could be a reason for it. But I think if we have another game where we lose, the offense doesn't put up doesn't put up over 20 points, it's tough to keep going with it. But it's also tough when the defense is struggling the way that it is with the injuries and things. So ask me after next week, James. We'll talk about it again.
And the reason I ask is because a lot of what we're looking at Pittsburgh struggles right now, I can draw a ton of parallels to what Cleveland's going through. Cleveland has not put up 20 points on the board yet this season. And what we're looking for Pittsburgh right now, 18 points and a win, 13 points and a win, 20 points and a win, 24 points and a loss, and 17 points and a loss. This offense isn't much better than Cleveland's offense right now.
Can I say something?
Yep.
Yes, please.
Pittsburgh is paying, though, compared to what Cleveland is paying.
That's fair.
That's the real difference, at least. You know what I mean?
I'm curious about that because
no doubt
we know that Pittsburgh has the highest paid defense and the lowest paid offense, but I am curious to see about the breakdown of that. So James,
I mean, you think about it, Deshaun Watson's 50-60 million himself. Nick Chubb's another 12 or 13. Cooper's got to be 15 million plus. They just paid Judy in the offseason. He's probably at least 10 or 12. Those offensive linemen are making money. I bet they have a good $120 million or more tied up in that offense. Maybe even 130 or 140.
You talking about the offense for the Browns?
Offense only for the Browns. Yeah, that's got to be more
128 million.
Yeah,
this year.
Yeah, no surprise, right?
Yep.
You think about those guys and the guys that have been paid, but their offense is pitiful.
Yep.
So I think Dylan's onto something. We're struggling, but we're not paying anywhere near as much for our struggles.
Yeah. The Browns are 128 mil. The Steelers are 73 mil. The only team spending less on offense than us is the Packers. And we know where they're at. So defensively, the Browns are paying 89 mil. We're paying 136.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see that. It's very interesting. And the more interesting part for me is next year with the free agency things that are coming up, Pittsburgh only has 47 million invested into next year's offense. The Browns have 197.
You're not giving any more money to any of the guys right now.
Yeah, no.
And the only guy that could be getting a raise is Najee Harris.
Yep.
And that's if you even keep him. And I would be very skeptical of them keeping him right now.
Yeah.
Especially if Jaylen Warren comes back healthy late in the year and makes a splash, and I kind of expect him to, honestly.
Yep. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens moving forward. I don't have anything else for the show. Either of you guys have any last minute thoughts before we end?
Could I say something because of the special occasion?
Absolutely.
Boz for president, baby.
Love it.
We do love the Boz for president.
Well done, Dylan. Appreciate you coming on the show and joining us this week, man. It was fun having you on.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't have the best podcast etiquette.
No,
I
you're
felt like I
good.
was interrupting you.
Yeah,
So I appreciate it.
We'll iron out all the kinks. There's no such thing as podcast etiquette. Interrupt each other. Get your thoughts out there. We love it. We can't thank you guys enough for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, remember to like and follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell. It's free. It don't cost you a thing. Don't forget the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. Make James down here very happy. And also, Dylan, little promo for you. Do you do any artwork or anything anymore?
Not currently.
Not currently?
We're working on our house. We're remodeling it.
Fair enough. Well, if Dylan ever gets back into stuff, we'll happily share your pages or whatever you want to share. So
I appreciate it.
can't thank you guys enough. So for James and myself and Dylan Sonney, peace.
Peace.